Hey friends, welcome back to Clear Enough, the podcast about getting clear on what matters one imperfect step at a time. I'm your host, Bushman, and today we're diving into a topic that's deeply personal for me, redefining success according to your values. Because here's the truth. For a long time, I thought I was chasing success, but really I was chasing approval, and those are not the same thing. If you've ever looked around and realized the game you are playing doesn't even feel like your game anymore, that you're winning but not fulfilled, then today's episode is for you. We're going to talk about how to change the scoreboard, because if the scoreboard you're using doesn't reflect your values, you'll never feel like you're winning, no matter how many points you score. For a long time, success for me looked like the typical American checklist: money, recognition, prestige, and power. And if you work in law, you know exactly what I mean. There's a ladder you're supposed to climb: law school, clerkship, firm, partnership. Maybe someday you get your name on the door, or if you're really lucky, etched into the side of the building. That's the dream. That's how you make it. I thought that's what I wanted too, until I got closer to it. I still remember the moment I realized that version of success didn't actually fit me. I was in law school, surrounded by hyper-competitive people who lived for the hustle. They'd stay late, argue cases over coffee, debate obscure laws just for fun. And I remember thinking, why doesn't this excite me? I wasn't lazy. I wasn't unmotivated. I just wanted something different. I wanted to help people. I wanted to feel peace in my work, not pressure. But I didn't know how to articulate that at the time. So instead, I convinced myself I was broken, that something was wrong with me, because I didn't want the same things that everyone else wanted. And then came the moment that changed everything. The day that I met the man whose name was on the wall. It was my second year of law school, and I was sitting in the little waiting area outside the dean's office. I was waiting for a meeting, flipping through my notes, when one of the law school's big-name alumni walked in. This guy was the kind of lawyer everyone looked up to. Big firm, big clients, lots of money, big donations to the school. The kind of guy that they bring back for guest lectures and award ceremonies. He'd just come out of the bathroom and started talking loudly to one of the associate deans, and I'll never forget what he said. He said, "You know, there's a real problem with young people these days. There's a flyer in that bathroom about mental health and addiction support. If I ever found out one of my associates called one of those numbers, I'd fire him on the spot." I froze. I pretended to be looking at my phone, but my stomach dropped. Because in that moment, I realized something very clearly. If that is success, if being powerful means losing your compassion, I don't want it. I'd always thought I was broken for not wanting the life everyone else seemed to want. But that day, I realized I wasn't broken. I was just different. That moment flipped a switch in my brain. It was the first time I thought, maybe success doesn't have to look like this. Maybe it could mean something else, something quieter, something truer. And honestly, that realization saved me. Because up until then, I thought my options were either to chase that same version of success or be considered a failure. I didn't know there was a third option: to build my own scoreboard. That realization set me on a long, messy, beautiful journey to define what success means for me. It didn't happen overnight. In fact, it took years and a lot of trial and error to figure it out. But what I've learned since then is that redefining success isn't about lowering your standards. It's about changing your metrics. I stopped measuring success by titles, income, and apparent busyness. And I started measuring it by meaning. For me, success became about having the freedom and resources to live generously, to provide for my family, to help other people, to make a difference, and to spend my time on things that actually matter to me. It became about using my career as a tool, not a trap. And when I finally made that shift, when I started living by my own scoreboard, everything felt different. My body even felt different. I wasn't clenching my jaw anymore. I wasn't holding my breath. I was breathing again. When I started chasing peace instead of prestige, my whole life started to open up. When I talk about success now, I'm not talking about a number in a bank account. I'm talking about a feeling in my chest. Success now feels like calm. It feels like walking into my house at the end of the day and hearing my kids laugh and having them run up to me right when I come in the door with hugs and kisses. It feels like taking a walk with my wife without checking my email. It feels like being proud of the person I'm becoming, not just the resume I'm building. And here's the thing. I still work hard. I still have goals, but my motivation has changed. I'm not working for validation anymore. I'm working for alignment. Because when you're working in alignment with your values, work gives you energy instead of taking it away. The old scoreboard was about proving myself. The new one is about becoming myself. Practical reflection. Let me pause for a second and give you something to think about. If you're listening to this while driving or doing dishes, just keep it in your head. But if you've got a notebook, write this down. And pause the podcast if you need a second. Ask yourself, what's on my current scoreboard? If your scoreboard has words like promotion, approval, followers, money, or recognition, that's okay. We've all been there. And those things aren't even bad. They're just not enough for a complete life. Now ask, what's missing from my scoreboard that I actually care about? Maybe it's peace. Maybe it's time with your kids. Maybe it's your health. Maybe it's creativity or service or faith. Whatever it is, circle it because that's your starting point. You can't win a game if you don't know what points count. And for most of us, the reason we feel exhausted isn't because we're not winning. It's because we're keeping score in the wrong game. For me, success is about freedom, growth, happiness, integrity, and thoughtfulness. Freedom to choose how I show up in the world and how I spend my time. Growth, because I never want to stop learning and becoming a better version of myself. Happiness, not surface level laughter, but deep, sustaining joy that remains even when life gets messy. Integrity, because I want to be the kind of person who chooses the harder right instead of the easier wrong. And thoughtfulness, because I never want to lose sight of the people around me. Those 5 values have become my rules for living. They guide every decision, every opportunity, every yes, and every no. And when I follow them, I feel grounded. When I don't, I feel lost. The old version of success, the one I was chasing in law school, cost me a lot. It cost me sleep. It cost me presence. It cost me peace. I remember the first semester of law school, I told myself, you could do anything for 1 year. So I worked constantly. I skipped dinners. I lived at the library and it worked. I got good grades, but I was miserable. Then one day, one of my professors looked at us and said, if you don't want that life, don't fight for it. And I'll tell you, that line hit me like a ton of bricks because I realized I didn't want that life. I didn't want the 80-hour work weeks. I didn't want to chase money at the cost of peace, at the cost of living my life. So I stopped. I started treating law school like a day job. I worked during the day and went home at night. I started being present with my wife and with my kids again. And for the first time in a long time, I started to feel like myself. I want to talk about what happens next, what it looks like to actually live according to your values, the trade-offs that come with that, and the surprising peace that follows. Because here's the truth. Living aligned doesn't mean living easy, but it does mean living light. There's this misconception that once you know your values, everything gets simpler, that clarity automatically creates ease. But here's the thing. Clarity doesn't always make things easier. It just makes them clearer. It just makes them meaningful. It shows you what's right, even when what's right is harder. There have been so many moments in my career where I had to choose between what looked like success and what felt like success, between doing the easy thing and doing the right thing. And I wish I could say I always got it right, but I didn't. There were times when I let people's expectations drive my decisions, when I said yes because I didn't want to disappoint someone, when I sacrificed rest or time with my family just to look like I was keeping up. But every time I did that, I could feel it. The dissonance, the shame, the sense that I traded something meaningful for something shallow. That's the cost of misalignment. It eats away at your peace. When I started living by my values, the decisions didn't necessarily get easier, but the regret stopped. Because once you know what really matters to you, you can start choosing the kind of hard that's worth it. I mentioned this in part 1, but it's worth saying again because it's one of the most important rules I live by. If my job ever cost me my marriage, it costs too much. That rule has changed how I make decisions. It's a filter I run everything through. Promotions, projects, deadlines. It reminds me that success at work can never replace success at home. I've had seasons where I was tempted to ignore that rule, where the pressure to achieve was so loud that it drowned out my priorities. But every single time, I paid for it later. So now I try to make my values visible. Literally, I have a note on my desk that says, family first, integrity always. Because values aren't useful if you keep them in a drawer. You've got to see them, say them, and live them. Practical reflection. If you're listening right now and you're trying to figure out how to live more in alignment with your values, here's a simple exercise I want you to try this week. Step 1. Write down your top 3 values. Just 3. Don't overthink it. Pick the words that make your chest feel lighter when you say them. Step 2. For each value, write 1 rule of life statement. Something that reflects what that value means in action. For example, family. If it costs me my relationships, it costs too much. Integrity. I do what's right even when no one's watching. Or growth. Every day is a chance to learn something new. Step 3. Put it somewhere you'll see it every day. Your phone lock screen, your bathroom mirror, your desk, an alarm on your phone. Because visual cues become mental reminders. And here's the magic. The more you see your values, the faster you'll notice when your life starts drifting away from them. Living your values requires sacrifice. Sometimes that means disappointing other people. Sometimes it means saying no to good opportunities because they don't align with your bigger vision. There was a season early in my career where I said yes to everything, every new client, every speaking opportunity, every extra project. I told myself I was building momentum, but really I was just burning out. And one night I sat in my office long after everyone else had gone home, staring at my computer, and I realized I didn't even like what I was building. That was a sobering moment. Because success doesn't mean much if you hate the person you're becoming to get it. That night I promised myself something new. I will never trade peace for progress again. I've broken that promise more than once, but every time I return to it, my life gets lighter again. When people think about integrity, they think big picture moral choices, whistleblowing, telling the truth when it's hard, refusing to cut corners. And those things matter. But I've learned that most integrity work happens in the small moments. It's in the email you rewrite instead of sending in frustration. It's in the boundary you keep even when it feels uncomfortable. It's in the moment you admit that you dropped the ball instead of pretending you didn't. Integrity isn't just about being honest with others. It's about being honest with yourself. When you mess up, and you will, own it fast. Apologize if you need to. Learn, adjust, move on. That's how you build credibility with yourself and with the people around you. When people know they can trust you, not because you're perfect, but because you're real, that's when influence starts to compound. Here's something I wish someone had told me earlier. Alignment is not a one-time decision. It's a daily recalibration. You can't just decide once to live by your values and expect everything to stay perfectly balanced, because life pulls at you. Work deadlines, family needs, expectations, comparison. Every day is an opportunity to drift. So every day is an opportunity to return. One of my favorite ways to check in with myself is with a simple question. Does this feel like me? When I'm working on a new project, or saying yes to something, I ask that question because sometimes the difference between peace and pressure is just one unchecked yes. Try it. Next time someone asks you to take something on, pause before you answer. Take one deep breath and ask yourself, does this feel like me? If it does, great. If it doesn't, try saying no with kindness. Because saying no to misalignment is saying yes to peace. When I started saying no more often, something unexpected happened. People started respecting my time more. At first, I thought saying no would make people like me less, or make me a less valuable employee. But what I discovered is that clear boundaries actually build trust. When you stop overpromising, people start to believe you again when you say you can do something. And more importantly, you start believing in yourself again. There's a kind of quiet confidence that comes from keeping your own word. To others, yes, but especially to yourself. Because the moment you start trusting yourself to follow through on what matters, you stop chasing everyone else's approval. And that's when real confidence begins. Recently, I had just finished a huge project at work. So I'd planned to spend some time on Saturday catching up on some of the work that had gotten behind while I was working on that project. But that morning, we had one of our daughter's volleyball games. My wife mentioned wanting to drive around afterward to look at model homes, not because we're ready to buy something, just because it's something we enjoy doing together. My first thought was, I don't have time for that. But then I caught myself. I remembered my scoreboard. I remembered that one of my values is presence. So I said yes. We spent the whole afternoon as a family, laughing, dreaming, making memories. And it was perfect. Then Monday came, and that old voice popped back up. That one that says, "You're behind. You should have worked. You wasted time." And for a second, I believed it. But then I stopped because I realized, no, I didn't waste time. I invested it in what matters. And that's the thing about redefining success. The old rules don't stop talking overnight. They'll whisper in your ear for years. But the more you live by your values, the quieter those voices get. Practical reflection. Here's another exercise you can try. I call it your alignment inventory. Take a sheet of paper and divide it into 3 columns. Label them aligned, almost, and off. In the aligned column, list the parts of your life that feel in sync with your values. Maybe your family time, a creative project, a new habit you're proud of. In the almost column, write down the things that mostly fit, but could use a little more balance, like work projects that you like, but often creep into your evenings. And in the off column, write down the things that drain you, frustrate you, or don't fit your values at all. Now here's the key. Pick just one thing from the off list and ask, what's one small way I could make this more aligned? It doesn't have to be a massive overhaul. Sometimes alignment starts with a single, honest conversation. Next, we're going to talk about what it looks like to live that redefined success every day, not in theory, but in practice. Because it's one thing to know your values. It's another thing entirely to live up to them on a Tuesday morning when the deadlines are piling up, the kids are fighting, and you're running on 3 hours of sleep. I'll be honest, I don't always get this right. I still have moments where I forget what game I'm playing. Moments where I let the old scoreboard sneak back in. Like the time I was beating myself up for not finishing that project over the weekend. The same weekend I chose to spend time with my family, looking at houses, laughing, and making memories. I caught myself thinking, you should have worked, you're behind. And that's when I had to stop and remind myself, no, this was the work. Building connection, creating joy, being present. That's the work my values call me to do. Realignment isn't glamorous. It's often uncomfortable. It's the quiet process of telling yourself the truth again and again until it finally sticks. When I catch myself slipping into old patterns, chasing validation, overcommitting, ignoring rest, I pause and ask myself 3 simple questions. First, what story am I telling myself right now? Second, is that story true? And third, what story do I want to tell instead? That's realignment. It's not about perfection. It's about course correction. There's this moment I keep coming back to. I've shared it before, but it still gets me. When my second daughter was little, she had to have surgery. It wasn't life-threatening, she just had her tonsils out. But it was scary for her, and she was in pain, and I had a choice to make. At that time, I was self-employed, running my own law firm. I could have worked through it, set her up on the couch next to me, typed away while she recovered. But I didn't. I decided to take a few days off, to just sit with her, watch cartoons with her, hold her hand when she woke up scared. Then it hit me. Success isn't always about doing more. Sometimes it's about doing less, and doing it with love. That's what redefining success feels like in real life. It's choosing presence over productivity. It's realizing that the moments you'll remember most aren't the ones where you worked an extra hour. They're the ones where you looked up and said, this matters more. Practical reflection. One of the hardest parts of redefining success is deciding what enough means for you. Our culture glorifies more money, more titles, more followers, more hustle. But if you don't define enough, that goalpost will keep shifting forever. So I want you to try this. Take a piece of paper and write 3 sentences. 1. Enough income for me looks like. 2. Enough time for me looks like. And 3. Enough success for me feels like. You might be surprised by what comes out, because the truth is, enough is rarely a number. It's usually a feeling. Peace, presence, or purpose. And when you define your own enough, you stop letting the world tell you you're behind. When you start living by your own scoreboard, a few things happen. First, people notice. Some will be inspired, others will not get it. That's okay. You're not here to live someone else's story. Second, your priorities start to shift naturally. You stop saying yes to everything. You start saying yes to the right things. And third, life gets both quieter and fuller at the same time. You stop needing to prove yourself. You start wanting to serve others. You stop chasing applause. You start chasing alignment. That's the paradox of redefining success. You achieve less of what the world counts, but you gain more of what counts to you. When I ran my law firm, I wanted to build something that felt different, something human. I had a friend who used to joke that he was the CPA with a personality, and I was the lawyer with a heart. And I loved that, because my goal wasn't just to draft great documents, it was to care for people. I remember one client in particular. She was battling cancer, going through chemo, and we were finishing her estate plan. She couldn't drink much except water and Crystal Light. After we finalized her documents, I dropped off a case of water and a box of Crystal Light packets at her door. It wasn't about business. It was about kindness. That's what happens when you redefine success. You start measuring your days not by how much you produce, but by how much you contribute. Practical reflection. If you want to check how aligned your days are, try this quick exercise I call the contribution compass. At the end of each day, ask yourself, did I contribute something meaningful today? Did I connect with someone authentically? Did I care for myself the way I would care for someone I love? If you can answer yes to even one of those questions, you're already succeeding. Because success is no longer about how many hours you work. It's about how many moments you live. I think about The Incredibles a lot, especially the part where Mr. Incredible goes from being a superhero saving people every day to working at an insurance company that denies claims all day. He's miserable, not because his job is bad, but because it betrays who he is. He's built to help people, and when he can't, everything else in his life falls apart. That's what happens to us when we chase the wrong scoreboard. We start feeling restless, resentful, disconnected, not because we're failing, but because we're succeeding at the wrong things. The moment you redefine success, you start living like yourself again, and you start remembering what super actually means for you. When you're clear about your values, success naturally turns outward. It stops being about climbing ladders and starts being about lifting people. For me, that looks like mentoring younger professionals. For you, it might look like volunteering, teaching, parenting with intention, or simply showing up with kindness in your workplace. When you live aligned with your values, your presence becomes an invitation for others to do the same. That's the quiet revolution of redefining success. You give other people permission to stop performing and start living. Practical reflection. Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a simple challenge, something I call the next right step. Think of one value that matters most to you right now. Maybe it's freedom, integrity, creativity, or peace. Then ask yourself, what's one 10-minute action I can take this week that moves me closer to living that value? It doesn't have to be big. It could be taking a walk without your phone, writing a thank you note, saying no to something small that doesn't fit your life anymore, apologizing when you could have defended yourself. Just one small act that reflects the kind of person you want to be. Because alignment doesn't happen in a single leap. It happens in 1,000 small steps. And every time you take one, you prove to yourself that you can be trusted with your own values. So here's where I'll leave you today. Redefining success doesn't mean giving up ambition. It means redirecting it. It means letting your goals serve your values instead of the other way around. You don't have to quit your job or move to the mountains to start living differently. You just have to decide what matters and start living like it does. The real win isn't having your name on a building. It's having peace in your heart, love in your home, and integrity in your choices. That's the kind of success that lasts. If today's episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you. Leave a review, share this episode with a friend, or leave me a message on Instagram at clear.. And if you want to go deeper, grab my free guide on redefining success, linked in the show notes. It'll help you take these ideas and turn them into action. Until next time, remember, you don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to be clear enough to take the next right step.